$1 Million Wrap Shop podcast, where we are talking about how to build, grow, and sustain $1 million wrap shop. Today, joining me, as always, I have my beautiful wife, Tabitha.
Yes, I'm
Um,
excited.
and so we're going to kind of, recap a little bit of what we did last week and kind of bounce off of that. And then we're going to land on a topic of hiring. And I think that's something that, would benefit a lot of shop owners out there. And, it's something that even for us to talk about it is really beneficial because it helps us kind of go over and keep in mind some of the things that we need to practice as well in our processes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, last time we talked about on the last episode, we spoke about knowing now what you know after having all these years of experience in your business, what you have. If you were looking backwards, what would you have done differently? So we spoke about that. And one of the things that we touched on was hiring. So let's go into hiring today.
Okay. So, the thing about hiring is it's time consuming and it has to be done very methodical and it has to be well thought out. I'll start off by saying you can't hire out of a place of desperation.
Wow.
Because you almost always pick the wrong person.
Right.
Because you're so quick to, jump in and fill a spot that you're not really thinking about all of the aspects that this person may be bringing with them, who they are, what they're going to be doing, have you thought out their job? Have you thought out their job description?
Mm-hmm. Because the job description is not just important for the person that you're hiring, but it's equally as important for you.
Yeah.
For you to understand what is it that I need to run my business better.
Yeah. And
go ahead. So how do you know when to hire?
Well, I think, for us and, for any shop in general, whenever you have to turn away business or you're having to schedule really, really far out in advance because you just can't keep up, I think that's a good telltale sign of, okay, maybe we need to look at hiring either this first employee or someone else to help us, relieve some of the workload off of our staff we already have now, if you do have staff, or if you're just by yourself,
right.
When you figure out you can't do it alone and you really need some help.
When you have jobs starting to slip through the cracks.
Yeah, because you don't want your customers to start complaining.
Right. And if they are complaining, what do? It's time to hire, right?
Well, yeah, and you have to kiss a lot of butt too because you don't want to lose those customers.
Because growing hurts. Sometimes you have those growing pains that are starting to happen, and it's a great thing. It's a great thing to start to have, but if you can hit it head on from the beginning and you can kind of anticipate, okay, wow, our workload's really growing here, or your busier seasons, and start planning for that.
Yeah. And you have to hire from a forward position. And what I mean is once you're already kind of behind the eight ball on hiring someone and you're kind of in that spot of desperation, it's really not a good place to be because you're not hiring for growth. You're hiring to catch up with what you're lacking and what you've missed, and maybe to fill gaps that you're falling in. But what you want to do is be able to plan out, who do you need? Who are you going to need 3 months from now, 6 months from now? And that's the person you want to hire.
Right.
Because it gives you time to not only vet the right people and figure out, you're going to go through a lot of interviews to find that right person. And that's going to take time.
So is that when you would get your pen and paper out? Is that when you would, what would that process for you? And looking back, you've done that quite a number of times. When you see a need, are you looking at the things that you're missing and you're trying to fill somebody for those missing? Or are you trying to look at each department or what the future departments are that you would need in order for your business to continue to grow at that level?
Yeah. I mean, back when I first started, we were definitely hiring from a place of desperation, right? Because we didn't know what we know now, and you only know what you know. But now what I try to do is say, okay, what does the future of Wraps Inc. look like? And who are we going to need to fill those shoes? Who are we going to need to fill, the vision that
Wow.
we have for the company?
So if you're too busy doing all the work, it's kind of hard to take a back seat for a second and to be the visionary. So that's where you talk about the last episode about the necessity for a little bit of rest.
Yeah. You need time to plan, and you need brain space to be able to think clearly and to focus and to sit down and plan properly, where you're taking your business in the next year, and what does that look like.
So that could be a morning. You could shut down your office for a morning and put a sign on the door, forward your phone, all the calls to, whether you have someone else to answer the calls or to your cell phone that you're going to be returning by a certain time. And then you can work on that business plan for the new hire.
Yeah. Well, I think you should block out your time. I've even done this with, some of our employees that we have now is, you want to take an allotted time, let's say from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And this is your planning period. This is the hour that nobody bothers you. Your door is locked, your phone is off, and you let everyone know, hey, this is my planning time. Don't bother me right now. I can't take a phone call. I'll return the phone call.
Right.
But for the growth of your business, somebody has to do that. And that somebody has to be you, because you are the visionary of the business. No one is going to plan your business for you.
Right.
No one is going to take the time to say, hey, Brent, what does our next year look like? And what do we need to do to prepare for that? They're not, nobody else is going to think about that except for you. So that falls on your shoulders as an owner. That's something that's really, it's really needed for your business and really super important to take time to do that.
So can I ask you a question? Would you think it's just as important for you to write down not only the things that you're looking for in the qualities or the job description, as you were saying, but maybe the things that you do not want?
You mean like qualities in a person that you don't want?
Maybe qualities, or, I mean, I wouldn't think it would be any kind of experience. Any experience would be good experience, correct?
Yeah. And
for the most part?
It depends on where they came from.
Yeah. At this point, though, so going back to the drawing board, whenever you're actually planning, so you're looking, walk us through that real quick. For a new hire. Are you also considering at that moment, not only that you need to hire, but can you afford to hire?
Yeah. So that's something that you have to sit down and think about. And I was to a point where I couldn't afford not to hire someone, because customer acquisition is expensive and it takes a lot of time. And so what was happening with me on my first hire was, I'd worked hard. I door knocked, I called, I, did what I could to get the customers that I had that got us off the ground and made us into a legit business. And I didn't want to lose those customers. And so I knew that no matter what it took, I was going to have to hire somebody and just kind of bite the bullet.
Right.
And take that leap of faith and say, this is it. I'm betting on me. I believe in myself. I believe in the vision I have. I believe in my company.
Wow.
And I believe that if I can take the trajectory that we're going now and add to it, it's only going to get better from there.
Right.
But it does have to be that, the right person. You have to find the right person to help you move that vision along. So for me, planning, I like to look at, like I said before, where are we going to be in a year, and who do we need to start finding for that position? Because, finding employees, it takes a long time. Unless you always have continue to run ads of hiring ads like on Indeed or these other websites, you typically don't have prospects looking for jobs that are just knocking on your door every day.
Especially if you're a new business and you're up and starting, they might not. You're doing good to just try to get your customers to know who you are and where you are. So Let's talk a
And
little. Go ahead.
and I'll say for the wrap industry, we already kind of start behind the eight ball because it's such a new industry.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, let's say you're going to hire a graphic designer,
Mm-hmm.
okay, at some point, or an installer at
Mm-hmm.
some point, and they have to know how to install vinyl or design a wrap.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd say 85% of graphic designers that I have hired or come across, they've never designed a vehicle wrap.
Wow.
If you're lucky, you might get one from another shop.
So what are they learning in design school?
Um,
what programs are they learning?
They learn the programs, but
okay.
The thing
but
is,
they don't know how to use templates. Is that what you're saying for like vehicle wraps?
A lot of
what
them,
are you finding?
They don't know how to design in 3-dimensional.
Okay.
And that's tough. Time management has always been a big thing for us.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I get a graphic designer that's fresh out of college or school, wherever
Mm-hmm.
they went to school at, they don't teach time management. So time management is something that is very important to us. And if you're a wrap shop and you're doing a lot of volume,
Mm-hmm.
you can't afford for your graphic designer to sit on a wrap for 2 weeks designing it.
Yeah.
Because you're going to lose
You're
money.
never going to be able to charge somebody enough money for that either.
And it stops the workflow of the shop. And so, they have to be cognizant of time management. But, I'll go back to that first employee,
Mm-hmm. Are you talking about when you first started?
When I first started, yeah.
Okay.
I hired the wrong person to start off with. I hired a helper to help
Mm-hmm.
me hold things and install things that they had no clue how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They needed a job.
Mm-hmm.
They were willing to come give it a try.
And you were probably needing someone who's cheap.
Oh,
so a cheap
that's
person,
true, yeah.
Something that comes cheap is somebody who really doesn't know much about it. So you can teach them something,
Yep.
But at the same time, they're not going to be asking for top dollar because they don't know anything.
Yeah.
So did they really bring too much? Did they really bring a lot to the table?
I mean, it freed me up a little bit to do some things, but in the end, it ended up costing me a lot more time
Mm-hmm.
than it gave me back.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I had to train this person how to install wrap, which they really, they were only with me for about a year, so they never really got that far.
Mm-hmm.
But just training someone how to properly hold the material while you're trying to pull backing paper or you're trying to line up panels, like
Mm-hmm.
it's not an easy thing to do.
Right. And the process has changed a lot too.
Yeah. So
the materials have changed because that's when the first materials were coming out and the materials have gotten better.
Yeah. Thank God for that. But, so I spent a lot of my time that I didn't have already, trying to help this person learn how to do his job.
Mm-hmm.
When in hindsight, if I would have if I would have hired the right person, I could have freed up a little bit more of my time and had more time to go greet customers, to do the things that I do well.
Mm-hmm.
And the person that I hired can do the things that they do well, and it can come together and work together to grow the business.
Okay. So let's go there. Let's say that this is your planning zone right now. And this is your 8 to 9 a.m. Back then. And you already failed. You've already realized that you hired the wrong person for the position.
Mm-hmm.
You realize that, okay, this person's not exactly who I needed. It's not the person themselves, but what their experience level and maybe the position. So now you've realized that you need a different person. What would that look like? What would you start with? What was it that you realized when you looked at your job scenario, at your processes, what was falling through the cracks and things like that? What kind of person did you realize that you actually needed?
Yeah. So that first person that I should have hired that I didn't would have been a receptionist. And when I say receptionist, they're going to do more than that.
Mm-hmm. So this is a person that would maybe wear a few more hats, so to speak.
Yeah, they're going to have to at the beginning, because let's just say it's just, me and the person that I'm going to hire.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to want that person to be a receptionist / administrative type person that can do billing, that can answer phone calls,
Return
that
phone
can
calls.
return phone calls, that can maybe learn how to do some estimating from time to time whenever I'm tied up and I can't get there. You know, I needed someone who, whenever a customer came in the door, they could greet them and be a buffer between myself and the customer. Because, you know, if you're an installer or a designer, or if you're doing both, like I was doing for so long, when you're in the back in the warehouse installing, and then you have, you know, interruptions after interruptions from customers needing a price on this, or you just have that one customer who just loves to stop by the shop and, you know, they're nice, and it's great to have that, but they can suck up your time. And so, you know,
and you're trying to give them the attention that you feel that they deserve at the time that they're there. But the truth is you've got to get some work done. And so you're trying not to be rude, but you also kind of have to hint at the fact that you have a lot more work to do.
Because, you know, you have to realize it's not a hobby anymore. You know, it's a real thing, and
it's a business. And you've got to treat it like a business.
And for me, it was like, you know, I had a family to sustain now. So, you know, I have to take it serious, and, you know, to have someone to buffer that little bit of time, it allows you to get so much done and to stay focused, not only what you're doing, but also to do a good job and to put out quality work. Because when you're doing it by yourself and you start to get overwhelmed, the first thing that's going to fall is going to be your quality of work, because you're running out of time. So you're rushing everything. There's only so many hours in a day that you can wrap a car or you can design, and something's going to fall through the crack. Typically, it's always going to be the work quality. And then after that, it's going to be your customer service and your follow-up, because you don't have time. And then after that, you start to get resentful when people walk through the door. And you're just like, oh my God, here's another customer. And, you know, and you start to not only hate what you're doing because you feel like you're failing at it, but potential business that's coming through the door, you don't want it.
Because it feels like a distraction.
And it turns people off. It turns customers away.
Because they can feel that.
And that's when you know you need to hire that first person.
So it's not a matter of whether or not you can afford. It's that you can't afford not to hire someone.
Exactly. Because, you know, if you're doing this, you've took out that loan, you've gotten the lease on a building, you've made all these steps to get you where you're at. It's like you don't want to start dropping the ball now when
you're starting to build a name for yourself. You're having people come in because of who you are. And this is drumming up more business and more business. The last thing you want is to drum up all that good business and then have a bunch of negative reviews and references, because you've worked so hard. When you don't want someone saying, hey, you know, that Brent over there, I don't know what's going on over there at Wrap Sync, but, you know, the last 3 times I got a job, they just dropped the ball. I mean, that's what people will say.
And your reputation's everything.
Yes.
Especially when you're first starting.
So tell me a little bit more about the person that you realized that you needed to hire. Was someone who would be administrative, is what you were saying, someone that's good with people, someone who who's able to wear a couple hats, might be doing a little bit of invoicing and estimates. How do you set them up for success?
You have to, first of all, you have to know what their job is going to be able to tell them what their job's going to be. You have to.
And I feel like, I'm going to stop you right there. I feel like a lot of times you're still figuring it out too as a business owner.
You are.
So that's why it's so important to have that time period for you to really reflect and see what it is that you are in need of in order to write that job description, so that way when the right person you see, you know that they're going to fit that bill for you.
Yeah, because when someone comes in the door and you say, okay, you're going to be a receptionist, and in their mind, they're thinking, okay, I just have to answer the phones. And, you know, when somebody comes in, I say, hey, what do you need? And when you start asking them to do other things, they're not going to like that.
Right.
And it's going to confuse them. And then
they're going to feel like, okay, you're not paying me enough.
Yeah. So you have to, when you get that person on board, it's very, very crucial that you explain to them exactly what they're going to be doing, and that they may have to wear, a few hats during the day. But you also do have to keep in mind that, they are helping you. And like you said, you can't afford to not have this person.
Right.
So you're going to have to make sure they're compensated, for what they are doing. So you have to think about beforehand, how much are you willing to pay this person, and what exactly are they going to be doing? Because for me, I'm going to be looking for somebody that can answer phones, greet clients. They need to be outgoing. They need to be likable. They need to be patient. They need to have some knowledge about what you're selling and about what a wrap is, and, makes and models of different vehicles, because that's what they're going to be dealing with day in and day out, whether you're doing tent, PPF, or, vehicle wrap. So they're going to need to know, does a truck have a long bed or a short bed? Is it a crew cab or is it a quad cab?
Right.
Is it a
so
single
you're not going to
cab?
just hire them and throw them up front and then just say, okay, answer the phones, do these invoices.
Yeah.
Because when the person calls, guess what? The customer wants to know, they want to estimate, because sometimes they're calling around other wrap shops at the same time. And it's important for them to know what they're basing your pricing off of, because somebody down the road might quote them, let's just say $1,500, and you realize that can't be right for what it is that they're conveying that they're going to be doing. And then you can ask them, does that, what vehicle is this? Does it include the hood, the help me out there. You're not helping me.
The hood, the roof. I mean, there's so many,
there's so many components to a
does
vehicle.
the wrap have plastic bumpers, or are they painted bumpers that we're going to have to wrap?
Right.
These are things that they're going to have to know. So what I did with our receptionist is it's almost like a questionnaire. When someone calls in, there's a list of questions. What's the year, make, and model? What color is the vehicle? If it's a color change wrap, what color do you want the car to be? Do you want door jambs wrapped?
Okay.
There's so many variables, and you, as the owner, as the person that's been doing this by yourself, like, you're going to know what to ask. If you've been doing it for a while, it's going to come natural. If you don't know what to ask, then, I'd suggest start researching and figure out what it is you need to ask. But there's so many variables. So we've printed all that out. So
do you use a certain software? Is there a software that you use currently that helps with some of the pricing?
No, we use
estimating.
We use the Bad Wrap templates, and they have a little price estimator as far as, like, it gives you square footage of panels. We'll use that sometimes. But other than that, there's really not much that exists other than, just looking up the vehicle if we have a template of it already, or if it's something we've already done. But for right now, that's what we use. We use the Bad Wrap template program.
Okay. So now you've realized you've already hired that first person. Maybe it's your second person. Maybe you already hired the helper, and then you realize that you could still afford to have someone who's a receptionist / administrative. What does that allow you as a business owner to be able to do and focus on?
It allows you to free up some of your time to be the visionary. You're able to think about what you want the business to look like down the road. You're also able, oh my gosh, this is huge, because this is something that always happened to us when we were in that very infancy stage, is you would be printing a job, and then all of a sudden you're like, I ran out of material, because you haven't had the chance to slow down and think about, do I need to, order more material? Yeah. What do I need?
And to be truthful, in that beginning stage, you're doing everything you can to keep dollars in the bank account, and so you're not going and buying a bunch of extra material, because you're just trying to keep your business afloat.
Yeah, because most wrap shops are gonna have a vendor that's a day or 2 day ship away. Us, we were lucky to have one right down the street from us. So in those times, I would have to stop what I was doing, run to the supply house, get the material or the ink or whatever it was. And it's funny now when other shops will call, that are around us, and they'll say, hey, do you have this ink, or do you have this material? We ran out. It just, man, it makes me think of those days.
Pain points.
And it makes me kind of, thankful that I'm not in that situation anymore, and that we've kind of grown a little bit past, just the desperation of hurry, hurry, hurry. We gotta, get this job out the door. And then you've got the next person waiting, and the whole day is just like a tornado.
So
like
one
a
thing that
whirlwind.
we found that helped us, for anybody that's out there, is we found that it would be good for us to keep an extra set of inks, an extra set of, at that time, because we didn't have a lot of extra like money, on hand. So we found that it would be best for us to keep extra inks on hand and extra wrap material, the materials that we use the most frequently. Because like you said, some of that we could get every 1 to 2 days, but also considering who your customer is. If you have a customer that tends to always drop in some last minute jobs for you, just keeping some material around for them too, for their particular vehicles or signs or whatever it is that they're having. Would really help you and be advantageous for the person who's listening, who maybe keeps running into that same boat.
Yeah. And I was resistant to that because, for me, I'm looking at the bank account and I'm like, man, I don't want to just spend money for this material just to have an extra set that's just going to sit there. But, it's definitely the right thing to do.
But it saves you.
And it saves you
stress.
It saves you so much. And now I think we keep multiple sets of extra of everything, not only because we can afford to now, but we know that it's necessary. Because
it's kind of like hiring, like you mentioned, you can't afford not to.
Yeah, because the thing is, if you're booked out 2 weeks, whatever you order extra, you're going to use, because most of us use the same material to wrap. We use, the 3Ms or the Averys or whatever material you use. Just stay consistent with it and just keep that on hand, and it's, it'll work out. It'll be fine. But that's something that was huge for me that I would always forget about whenever I first started up. And you feel stupid because you're like, oh, I got jobs, but I have no material. And then you have to either hope the supply place has it, or you have to call one of your competitors and beg them, and that's like, you don't want to have to do that. That hurts your ego a little bit when you
because it just seems like at some point it seems unprofessional when it happens over and over. There's a time that it happens and it's just it happens, but over and over it starts to look like, man, that shop down the road, they need to get it together. So that's someone. So having someone who maybe can check behind you would be great too. That can just kind of be your right hand person.
That first person, they're going to be your right hand person regardless of what they do, because it's just you and them in the business. And so, you
need someone who's
they're relying on you for a job, and you're relying on them to keep you straight and to, be that buffer, like I was talking about, between you and the customer, and, allow you to be able to plan properly so you can make sure you have material on hand, make sure you have good inventory, make sure you're doing it, you're checking it daily.
Someone who doesn't mind phone follow-ups, calling, checking, following up with estimates that maybe someone hasn't approved yet. So we talked a little bit about the administrative person that you would be hiring. What about some of the other positions within the shop now that you've hired that first person and going forward?
Yeah. So I think the main positions that you're going to need when you're starting up a wrap business, if you're doing printing versus color change and printing, they're a little different. But if you're a wrap shop, you're probably going to do both. It's probably either going to be 50-50, or you might be a little heavy on the color change side, or you might be a little heavy on the print side, like we are. We don't do that many color changes, just because that's the market that we're not in that heavily, but we do them from time to time. So you're definitely going to need a graphic designer if you don't do it yourself. And like I said in the previous episode, you want to hire, that person that you're not. So
for the different positions that you're talking about, before we get into those different positions that you're going to be hiring, tell me a little bit about, you were talking about you mentioned to me some information that helped you about the personality profiles.
Yeah. So one thing that's helped me is the DISC profile system. And then
where did you find that?
I mean, you can find it I think a book is where I first heard about it. I can't remember the exact book.
And that's DISC, DISK,
No,
or
C.
DISC.
DISC.
All right.
You know what that is.
I do. Hey, but listen, when I listen to different things, YouTube videos and stuff like that, sometimes, like I was listening to a doctor earlier, and the doctor is just spouting off some of these acronyms, and I have no clue what this acronym means. And I'm just waiting for the moment when they spell it out for me so I would know what it is. So I just like to take it back and just assume sometimes that some of the people, they mostly know what you're talking about, but there are some people who this is new to them. They've been in their garages as a hobby and they turned it into a business, and they're having success, and they want to grow that business. They have that personality, that driven personality. So let's talk about those personality types that you found more information on.
So what it is, the DISC profiling system is, it basically takes it's a test, and it tells you kind of who you are as a person. It tells you a little bit about your character and what you are maybe good at, or what type of personality you have, if you're introverted or a little extroverted or whatever.
And this is a series of questions that it just asks you over and over.
Yeah, it's probably, I don't know, 50 questions. It depends on where you get it from. The one I use a lot is from TonyRobbins.com. He has a really good one. It's free. You can pay more if you pay more, they'll give you like a really detailed analysis of whatever you're doing. And
I know there's one that I had mentioned, you and I have had different conversations about things like this, but I used the Strength Finders one when I was working in the corporate world.
That's a book?
It's called Strength Finders. It's a white book with red letters. And there was, like, I think a 2.0, there was different versions of it. But when you purchase the book, in the back of it, there was, if it's still the same, it's been a while since I took that particular test, and everything with technology keeps changing, but there was a code, and you'd enter that code in, and then that test was just for you. And so it gave you a printed out result where you could print it out, about all of the strengths that you naturally have and some of your weaknesses. And the point of that book was actually to focus on your strengths so you could be stronger at your strengths versus trying to improve your weaknesses. Because I think this is what you're going to leeway back into right now, or segue back into.
Because you want to hire the person that's good at what you're not good at,
right?
Or the person that will do the things that you don't like to do. Because the last thing you want to do is, okay, let's say you left a job. You left a 9-to-5 job because you wanted to be an entrepreneur, because you enjoy the wrap business and you enjoy either designing or wrapping cars. And so that's what you want to do. But what happens is you end up having to do all these other things, like bookkeeping, taxes, answering phone calls, doing sales, research about different materials, or different aspects of business,
growing, sustaining, and building your business.
And so what happens is you end up doing all this stuff that you don't enjoy doing. And now that dream that you had to have a wrap business doesn't look so shiny anymore, because you're not really doing what you love to do most of the time. You're doing what you love to do a little bit of time, and then you're spending a lot more time having to learn how to do the things that you don't do well. So,
and then you don't really care to do either.
Yeah. So I always say, hire the person that's good at what you're not good at, and it's okay if somebody's smarter than you are.
Yeah.
That's who I want working for me. I want somebody that challenges my thinking, and I want somebody that, comes up with great ideas on their own, somebody that takes initiative to, just to be smart about things and
because
suggest
you're growing a
things.
Business.
Yeah.
So you want someone you want a person that's going to bring something to the table that you don't already have.
Yeah, because what happens is they make you look better in front of your customers. If you if you surround yourself with a bunch of smart employees who are well at what they're very good at doing what they do, it makes you look smart, not only because you hired them, but because, they automatically assume that you must know this stuff too. And so it's just better all the way around.
So now you would recommend that business owners take the test themselves, or if they haven't already, so they would figure out what their strengths are. They probably have an idea, but because we know that typically a person who's an entrepreneur, they're typically a driven person.
Yeah. So in the DISC profile, there's different types of personality, and the D stands for dominant or driver.
Okay.
The I stands for influencer. The S stands for steady, and then the C stands for compliance. And basically, the driver or the dominant person, that's kind of self-explanatory. The influencer is like an outgoing person. I would say they're probably good in sales. They're good at being persuasive. The steady person is the person who is steady. It's pretty self-explanatory. They're the ones who are going to be really patient. They're going to be very even keel. They're not very dramatic. They're not very easily moving from their state. And compliance. This is the person who is, I think, a good example for a compliance is like, okay, say if you're in the military and you always have to follow orders. It's like some people are very good at following orders and doing what they're told. Some people are not that good at it.
Yeah.
And they're very resistant to authority. So the compliance person is someone who is able to follow orders, follow processes, and,
and accept it.
And accept it. They know that's their role in the team, and they're just
happy with it.
They're happy to follow along. Okay. Yeah. And
I think that's what's important and to mention is that that you're building a team.
Yeah.
And so in building a team, the people who you're always going to have people who have different strengths and different weaknesses. And so when you're building this team, you're wanting to build a team that's strong
and so well-rounded.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's no one that's more important there's no position that's more important than another either.
Yeah. Because without one person on the team, then the whole team fails, and that's the way it should be. You should have a team that is very cohesive and a team that can work well together. And a way that you can assess this is to do the DISC profiling. And, that's something that we have done. And it's so easy. You can just go on, they can take the test, and then you get the results. And then it helps them grow as a person as well, because now they may understand, okay, well, this explains why I am this way or why I do things this way. But it's also a
big eye opener.
And it tells you who you work well with. And that will open their eyes too, because, this makes sense why I work well with this person and not this person. And so, if I just go through the roles in the shop, in the basic startup wrap shop that's maybe 5 years old, you're going to have an installer. This person, to me, typically is the D. It's going to be the dominant. It's going to be the driver. Installers have big egos most of the time, and they're very competitive. This dominant person, this driver, they're going to be competitive. They're going to be a leader, and they're going to be driven. Like they have a natural drive about them that allows them to complete what they're doing and do it well. So if I'm looking for an installer, I'm looking for someone that's a D, but I'm also looking for an installer that's a little bit more detailed focused. So maybe somebody in that steady range as well, the S, because they need to have patience when they're installing a wrap and they're trying to figure out a solution, or, they're having to work with other installers to figure all that stuff out. So that's, I'm going to go with that. And then you have a graphic designer. This person is going to need to be steady, and they're going to need to be compliant. Some of them may even be in the outgoing range a little bit, but I'd say 90% of the time, graphic designers are very introverted. They're quiet. All the ones that I've come across anyways,
maybe they just fit well on your team.
They're usually the gamers, you know, and so they need to be able to relay information from your client to the screen, to a wrap. And so they're going to have to be patient. They're going to have to be compliant. They're going to have to be understanding. They're going to have to deal with clients.
And they're going to have to be a listener, because they've got to understand what is it that your customer, your client is looking for.
They got to interpret what's in somebody's brain.
And not be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
Because if they don't understand what their goal is, it doesn't, they're not going to, it's going to take them so many time after time trying to just do artwork, and they're just going to be spinning their wheels.
Yeah.
So someone who's going to ask some good questions.
So if I'm looking for a graphic designer, I'm looking for someone that's in the S or the C, type range. They're going to have to be good with time management, and they're going to also have to be able to deal with customers. So they're going to have to be pretty well rounded. If not, they're going to have a good team around them. That's what I found, is that someone who lacks in one area, if you build your team well enough around that person, your team will lift that person up, and you can change that person. You can change not them as a person, but you can take the environment that they're in, and it'll become a place of encouragement, and they'll be safe. They'll feel safe to maybe share who they really are, or, kind of come out of their shell a little bit. And so if you build a well-rounded team, then your team will do that. And you don't, it kind of takes the work off of you as to have to break this person out of their shell if they're a little bit shy, or, if they have trouble dealing with one aspect of the job, but maybe they're very well at another aspect. That's something your team can help bring out of them.
So if you're doing an interview, what's some questions that you would ask?
For a graphic designer?
For any of the positions. What's something that you found to be a great question for you to ask people to kind of get an idea whether or not they're going to work well?
One
Rhapsync?
One thing I always ask my interviewees is if they've ever been on a sports team, if they've played sports. To me, that's very important, because an athlete they're very competitive. They know how to work well with a team. They know how to take a loss, and they know how to win, and they know how to celebrate a win without too much gloat. Some of them do. So a person that's athletic, that's played sports their whole life, to me, I think they're the most well-rounded people. Because they've dealt with a lot of that stuff early on. They've dealt with loss, they've dealt with failure, they've dealt with competitiveness. And so to me,
different personality types.
Yeah,
with other different personalities.
If you're on a sports team, you're working with 20 plus people, and they're all different. So it allows you to adapt to different personalities and have to work well with those people
with the same goal and agenda.
Yeah, because you all have the same vision. You're all going the same way, and you have to get your employees to go the same way. I heard someone say that, managing employees is like trying to get butterflies to fly all in the same way at the same speed. And that can be tough to do. So you have to pick that person carefully. So for me, that's the one question I always ask is, did you play sports growing up? What did you play? And just, make it conversational.
Well, it
not
also
like
helps.
You're prodding them, but
yeah,
it makes them think, okay, this person cares about me and what I did when I was younger, or what I'm interested in.
And you are. It does help you to kind of have the person break out of their shell a little bit.
Ask them what their hobbies are. That's a great thing too. What do you like to do outside of work? Like, that's a couple of questions that I think are super important to ask in an interview.
Great. Well, thanks so much for sharing all that information about the disc profiles and the questions about hiring.
I want to hit on production.
Okay.
That's the one I didn't talk about yet.
Oops. Sorry, I missed that one.
You're going to have to hire a production person as well. This person is very important.
Okay, when you say production, you're meaning the person who's getting all the jobs put together? What do you mean?
Yes. So the production person is the person who is the between person between the graphic designer and the installer. Okay. Because after the designer designs his wrap and does what he does, it has to be printed. It has to be cut down. It has to be trimmed. It has to be weeded. It has to be masked. There's so many things, and that's what this production person is going to do.
Okay.
So this person's going to have to be a C. Okay. They're going to have to be very compliant, and they're going to have to be able to follow processes and execute them, very well, because they're going to wear a lot of hats. Our production, they unload and load the printers.
Mm-hmm.
They keep up with inventory from time to time. They laminate.
Mm-hmm.
They
Trim
tape up.
down.
They weed vinyl. They trim panels.
Mm-hmm.
They do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like that in between person between the design phase and the install phase.
This is a person that has to be very focused, very regimented.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Very routine, very, very compliant, very, it's almost like a factory job if you're a production person, because you're doing a lot of the same things day in and day out. So yes, it may be a different job, but I mean, a panel is a panel. And so it's a lot of monotonous work, and you're going to have somebody that's good with that, that not only doesn't mind doing that stuff, but is good at it,
kind of competes with themselves to do a better job each day.
Yeah. And, that can be a wide range of people, because they're going to have to wear a lot of hats during the day. And, they're one of the most one of the most important, aspects of a team in a wrap shop to me, because they can make or break, a day very quickly.
Well, if they forgot to label something or pack something, if you're doing an out-of-town installation or off job site.
Yeah, they can also ball up a print in the laminator really quick, and and that can slow down production if you've got installers waiting on a print, and then your production guy.
It slows down your designer, because your designer is sending everything to the printer, and they already have the day's work printing. So now they've got to find time to slide that print in there.
Production is super important. So this person to me is going to be a C. They're going to have to be compliant, because they're going to have to be able to follow orders and processes and be able to execute them very well. The last thing that I kind of want to hit on here is, I feel like we'll probably have an entire episode or maybe half of an episode.
About what?
About what to do when people leave.
Oh.
We've talked about hiring. What do you do when they leave? And this is something that, we all have to deal with. And if you're a small shop, it can be devastating, especially if it's a key person or key people, because things happen and people are very transient nowadays.
Yeah.
Back in the day, when my dad was doing his shop, and I'd say 80s, 90s, around that time, that whole boomer generation, they were very much so about staying in a job for 20, 30, 40 years and collecting retirement after it, and they were fine. Now people are very transient, and they're very in and out, and it takes a lot to keep them interested now. So culture is super important. Culture is the heartbeat of the business. And
you're talking about culture within the business.
Yes. The culture within the business will make or break your business.
So is that what's coming up on the next episode?
Yeah, maybe. That might be a good topic.
Yeah.
But when someone leaves you, it's not the end of the world. Okay. Typically it's going to be for the better, because I believe that everything happens for a reason. And I believe in a higher power, and I believe that God is always kind of directing what we're doing. And, every time someone's left me, it's always been for the better after that. We've always grown, and it does hurt whenever they leave, because, if you're like me, you care for your employees, and personally, you're very attached to them because you're with them every day, day in and day out. And as a business owner, whenever they leave, you tend to take it personal, and you have to be able to separate those emotions.
Right.
You have to learn that, what someone does at work or with your business or to your business is not necessarily against you or against you personally or anything like that. So, when people leave, they're going to leave. You can't keep them forever. And so it's important that you not taking it personal, and that you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you remember your hiring processes, and then you get to do it again.
Yeah.
But this time you're stronger, a little bit more.
Right.
and you have luckily you've built a good culture around your place, and you have ones that'll pick up the slack, and you'll be able to jump right back in and not miss a beat. Mm-hmm. But
so it's important for the person, if you're hiring, it's important for you, for a person to take time, for a business owner or manager to take time out of their day and to make a plan, write out whom it is that they're looking for, what position that they're looking for, hiring, taking their time to hire the right person, to make sure that they're not hiring someone out of fear of not having someone or rushing, so that you don't make the wrong mistake, because that's costly. It costs you time, it costs you money.
Yeah. You don't want to hire out of desperation ever.
Yeah. So you're saying, so now that we know, and then you mentioned some questions to ask that are very helpful, and we talked about the DISC profiles today. So we've gone over a lot of really great information.
Yeah. So, I think company culture is a great episode to have.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll hit on that next.
Let's do it.
And I just want to thank everybody for listening today.
Yes.
We're going to wrap it up today.
Yes.
And
thank you guys for listening.
Don't be afraid to hire that first person. You can do it. You can't afford not to hire that person, because they're going to only build your business.
Right.
And they're going to help you grow. And that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Stay tuned.